Hi, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for turning up to this event. Before we proceed, just a few house rules. If you do hear the fire alarm at any point, please follow the staff or just make your way to the nearest fire exit, which is just directly behind you. If you do need to use the toilets, they are behind me as well. Okay. So to begin, I would like to welcome Mr. Surinder Chiba from the Greenwich Coalition of Equality and Human Rights. Mr. Chiba, if you would like to come and take the stage, sir.
Thank you. My name is Surinder Chiba and I am the Secretary of the Greenwich Coalition of Equality and Human Rights, who fight for the equality and community obedience and protect the rights where we can with a small power and all that. And we support these events today. The history repeats itself, and I, from my small heart, I thanks to the staff of this library who are lucky to be saluted. And secondly, all of you came here today, leaving home, children, very cold, to celebrate this book which is written by so many people here about East India Company who moved here and go to India and control and rule us. The history repeats itself. You know it and you will enjoy to read that. Various authors, they are ordinary people. Not their subject, they put their efforts. And Muhammad, who used to work here in Greenwich, and he took the initiative to do this work of history. And I did work 25 years in the Kara Greenwich Coalition, Greenwich Coalition of what was the race equalities, me and Dave, the history. I will not take the time. I salute you and I salute you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chima. Okay, next we have on the stage would Mr. Ahmadullah please come to the stage. He will give a short presentation on the Untold Stories of the East India Company. In a few moments.
Nobody just wants to get lost. Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Yes. Thank you very much for coming to this event. This is I just want to say that we completed this project in March, and we had a very big celebration event at the London Metropolitan Archives. And since then, we have been going to many places in London and outside. And our last visit was in Market Drayton. I don't know if you know Market Drayton. Market Drayton is in Shropshire. And the reason we went to Market Drayton is Market Drayton is the birthplace of Robert Clive of India. They have an annual arts fest during October, so they invited us to bring the exhibition and to bring the book, and 6 of our authors went, and we had an event in the library, and there's so many people came, and they also took us on a tour of various important sites, and many places have reference to Clive, like Clive steps, schools that Clive went, and the people tell you lots of stories. And the local museum have a lot of information on East India Company and what they call Clive of India. And the following day, when we went to Market Drayton, the Friends of Market Drayton Library, who arranged for us, they took us to Powys Castle in North Wales. Now inside Powys Castle, they have a museum called Clive Museum. And what we found really surprising is that, who knows what is a palki? Palanquin, palki. In the, what is it? Can you say?
What's the palki?
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a carrier that you carry somebody in. Isn't it? And you have 4 people to carry them on something like the blind.
Well, in Clive Museum, they had palki that belonged to Siraj-ud-Dowla. Do people know Siraj-ud-Dowla? He was the leader, Nawab, or King of Bengal, when Clive of India kind of defeated him on the battlefield, Plassey, Battle of Plassey. And it's funny, a palanquin belonging to Siraj-ud-Dowla ended up in Clive Museum in North Wales. So it was really kind of interesting. Anyway, this is just a little bit background about what we've been doing with this project. I'm just going to go through some slides to give you some background, how this project came about and how we have been delivering and our partners and so on. Now this is a picture of Captain James Lancaster. If you go to the Traders Gallery in National Maritime Museum, you will see this picture. He was the commander of the first voyage of the East India Company. They left Woolwich 13 February 1601 with 5 ships. One of them was victual ship, like supply ship, which they threw away, after they took all the supplies when they got somewhere near South Africa. And this is a picture of Red Dragon. And Red Dragon was the flagship, which commanded by Captain Lancaster, and names of some of the other ships as part of that fleet. They came back in September 1603. So it's like more than 2 years it took them to go and come back, and lots of things happened, en route and when they were there. And the stories are really kind of fascinating. Now this is how the project started. This was our original flyer, when we publicized, and we had such a massive response on the project launch. We had to stop people from coming in. It was getting very kind of dangerous, health and safety wise. It's very stuffy and hot as well. Just a little bit about Bricklane Circle, right? Then I'll come back to this project. Now, Bricklane Circle, we started formally in 2006, and what we wanted to do is to try and engage the local Bangladeshi community intellectually, right? To develop knowledge, to share, to engage with people, who are researching, encourage new research, to generate more kind of discussion, more knowledge sharing, more knowledge generation, and critical thinking, and so on, so that we can move ahead faster and catch up and benefit more and contribute more to the society and so on. But we also wanted to help discover shared roots of people. We live in this country together from so many different places. And when we first came to this country, we didn't know, many of us didn't know that our roots and links with this country go back very, very long way. A couple of years ago, I was involved with a project which was called How Villages and Towns in Bengal Dressed London Ladies in the 17th, 18th and early 19th centuries. Where we recreated dresses, that people like Jane Austen wore. And if you watch Jane Austen's films, written novels and the films made of our novels, you will see ladies, dressed up in white, and they represent muslin, the famous textile that came from Bengal. And when we looked at the records, there was so much textile that came from the whole of Indian region to this country. And Bengal was one of the most important center for British textile imports. So really, these strong historical links between, say, where I come from and Britain. And then through East India Company, so many of us become linked in so many different ways. So we wanted to help discover and learn and benefit from the deep shared roots that we all have. These are some of the things that we have been doing, like annual seminars, Battle of Plassey conference in 2007, when it was 250th anniversary of the Battle of Plassey. We have every year a conference on the story of Bangladesh, and Bangladesh is abroad. We run various projects, especially community cohesion type of projects, and historical projects. We run comedy evenings, entertainment for a bit of fun at the end of some serious discussion, and we have some occasional events. These are just some of the projects that we have run. One of the projects that we recently run is called Knowing One Another. We want to promote better understanding between different people who live in London, so that we can know one another better and empathize and share and synthesize. This was our first project. It was called Battle of Plassey Young People's Project. This project developed out of the conference that we organized in 2007. We engaged young people to study East India Company and write a book. This was back in 2008, the project started, funded by the Heritage Lottery Fund. And part of the process of this project was, we took young people on walks on East India Company sites in the other side, the Docklands area, East India Dock area, and City of London, and so on, just to get people to become familiar, with places, where buildings and activities of East India Company took place. And also we took them on visits to British Library, where sources of information on East India Company, and also we gave them mentoring from East India Company experts. That building used to be a East India Company warehouse. It's near Liverpool Street. It's called Cutler's Garden Warehouse, it was called that time. And this gentleman is Nick Robbins. He helped us quite a lot. He's written a book on East India Company. Have you been to this place? This is near the Parliament. And this is a statue of Robert Clive. Some people have been campaigning to have it knocked down. And this was the outcome of that project. So 8 young people wrote this particular book, and we launched at the Museum of London in Docklands in 2010. Again, hundreds of people came to celebrate with us. There's some pictures from the celebration event at the Museum of London. Now, going back to this particular project, you see what happened when we were doing our earlier project. We met a lot of people who asked us, why don't we do something like more creative, create more creative opportunities for people to learn about the East India Company, rather than write academic style chapters, which was the aim of our original, the project that we ran for young people. And after talking to a lot of people, we developed this idea of getting people to write fictions, based on facts to do with East India Company. I personally found this particular process extremely rich. It's just that the amount of time that you have to spend to try and understand the context, the atmosphere, the weather, what London might have been like, people's attitude, what kind of language people spoke, and so on. So you get a very rich experience out of trying to write historical fictions. You learn a lot about history. These are some of our partners: London Metropolitan Archives, National Maritime Museum, British Library, Victoria and Albert Museum, and Arts Without Border. They're the ones who dramatize some of our stories. So what we did, we organized visits, to heritage institutions like museums and the colleagues at the museums and the British Library. They showed us examples of interesting, materials, sources of information, and shared various stories with us to stimulate interest. We also got training from some of these colleagues who trained us how to read all English handwritings and so on. We also ran training on writing historical fiction from historical fiction writers. We also provided training on sketching. So if somebody wanted to sketch bits of their stories, right? Only one person did one bit of sketching. And again, we took people on the East India Company walks. So the other thing is, when we publicized this particular project, Human Stories of the East India Company, we had an incredible amount of interest from people from many parts of the world. I had emails from America, New Zealand, India, and various people came to see me. And white English people, they said they've got Indian ancestry. Right? The strangest one was an academic from, she's not strange, the strange is the story. An academic from, retired academic from Kent University. She still does a PhD, so we're examining, PhD, I think, so she said. So she wrote to me saying that she's actually descended of Mir Jafar. Right? I don't know, some of you, it would make no sense, right? But some of you know who Mir Jafar is. And I was very surprised. How comes an English lady is descended of Mir Jafar, the most hated person in the Indian subcontinent? And then she met me and she shared her story, and she also wrote something. So what we did, we actually invited three people, who have family history to do with this India Company, to come and talk to the volunteers, to join the project to write historical fiction. This is pictures from the launch. Now this gentleman, he's completely white, but he said his great-great-grandfather was Indian. Okay? See, what we learned from this project is that many white people in this country have Indian ancestry, but in the past, they kind of hid that link. But now, because of the changing the world, a lot of people are feeling quite proud, of the links that they have with India, ancestral links. This is British Library visit. That's National Maritime Museum, British Library, and that's London Metropolitan Archives. This is the family history session, where people are sharing with our group about their, links, ancestral links with India. One lady came to see me, and she thinks she's the descendant of an illegitimate daughter of a friend of Robert Clive. So there's a lot of people searching and finding a lot of links. And then, after we did, training and exposed people to stories of East India Company and human stories, and shared, sources of information and so on. Then we met regularly, and we got mentoring support over a 6-month period from a fiction writer who met the group once a month, plus he was available to respond email inquiries. And then what we did, once everybody submitted their stories. Then we send those stories to a journalist, a historian, and a fiction writer to provide feedback. And 3 people, they came and they gave each one of our writers, our authors, face-to-face feedback. And then they completed their story, and then we send them to be edited. And this was the process. Yeah, these are just some pictures of some training sessions. And this is the project end celebration at the London Metropolitan Archives. We dramatized, some of the stories, and we performed. And we got some performance for you as well later on. And we had the Q&A, with authors. Any questions on, would you like to know anything else or any clarification?
Did you have to use interpreters at any point?
No, because this was for people who can speak and read and write English well.
Was it a competition, or did lots of people apply to take part and you had to choose the best stories, or?
No. It wasn't a competition, but you see, originally, we were only going to take on about 12 people to join. This was our target, but we had 32 applications because it was quite massive. But because they were nearly all of them are really good, and they all seemed to be very motivated, right? So we took all of them on, 32. Right? We knew that people were going to drop off, but we didn't want to choose. Right? It would have been difficult to choose because they were all quite good and motivated. People did drop off, right? From 32 who joined, 15 finished. And see what I did. I was the person in charge of the project, managing the project. But during the process of the project, I decided to write a fiction of myself. I've never written fiction before. I found it very rich, And what I did, my story is based on the 6th voyage of the East India Company. They left London in 1610. And the 6th voyage consisted of 3 ships. And 2 of the ships one of them was the biggest that England ever built by that time. It was called Trade's Increase. It was one of the 2 ships that came out of the first production line of the East India Company. Because in 1607, East India Company set up its own shipbuilding in Deptford. And 1610, the first 2 ships came out, Peppercorn and Trade's Increase. The 3rd one was Darling, but that was, I think, they leased or purchased from somewhere else. And so the Trade's Increase went to Mecca, and the captain was captured by the Turkish, and 35 English people were kept, according to the captain, right, according to journal records, kept in prison for 7 months and marched to Sana, where the higher Turkish authority was based. And then some of them managed to escape back to the ship, and then they threatened the trade of Arabia, coming from India, and through threats they managed to get the other English people released, and then they went to Indonesia. Now, the biggest ship ever built by East India Company, Trade's Increase, got destroyed on the shore of an island in today's Indonesia, near West Java, called Pulau Punjab. And the captain, his name was Captain Middleton, who was in charge of the 6th voyage of the East India Company, Henry Middleton. And he actually died soon after his ship got destroyed. So my story is based on the destruction of the ship and Henry Middleton, who was the captain. And what I did, as part of the process of writing, I actually went to the island just to figure out, just to understand the weather, the context, and then I went to the mainland where the English set up their first factory in Captain James Lancaster, when he first went, the king gave the English people 2 houses in city of Bunton. So I just kind of looked around. So basically writing historical fiction is a really rich experience, and you learn a lot about history by trying to engage creatively. But I'm not a fiction writer, and if you read my story, you will see that it's more like an article with some dialogues. Any other questions before we move on?
How did you prove that white people had a link to Indian ancestors? Did you go to register of this record, or did you have photographic evidence? I don't know, in 17th
No, we didn't.
century.
No, we didn't do any proof. Right? It's people came to us.
And
They say, yeah. But then many of them have done their own family history, right? And they were credible, right? I mean, some people are not certain. Like one lady thinks she's the descendant of an illegitimate daughter of a friend of Robert Clive. She hasn't managed to establish 100%, right? But this is how she failed. But the descendant of Mir Jafar, she's written a very comprehensive account, right, of her family history, linking with Mir Jafar. No, we didn't do any research. It wasn't part of our project.
Once you had the introductory sessions at the archives, where presumably they illustrated to people how to use the archives. First of all, how long did those sessions last? And were then people expected to go under their own steam and continue with the research, or did you organise it for them?
No, what we did, the purpose of taking people to the British Library or National Maritime Museum is to just, there's 2 purposes. One is so they know, sources of information and how to access them, right? And then the other reason is that, when they're there, when the curator's there talking to them, they also tell them some interesting stories, right, about their collections. And sometimes that stimulates interest in people. The people who joined, they were encouraged to become members, join and do their own thing. Yeah, it was all up to them. Some did more than others.
How long did the introductory sessions last?
Oh, not long. I mean, no, the British Library, I think British Library was more than 2 hours, right? They took us to 2 different rooms, the Asia reading room, and then in another room. With the National Maritime Museum, they took us tour of the Traders Gallery, right? I don't know if you've seen the Traders Gallery, the East India Company Gallery, right? But then they also showed, in another room, they showed us how to access, the information. And then separately, we went back for a training course, which we agreed in advance with them, so they gave us a whole day training course.
The National Archives?
Yes.
And LMA, an hour?
No, LMA, so London Metropolitan Archives, we had a whole day training session. Very comprehensive.
Out of curiosity, why did you favour fictional storytelling to documentary storytelling, for example?
The first project that we did, we got young people to write like academic chapters for a book. And as I said before, there are a lot of people who wanted to engage more creatively, like painting or poetry or whatever. And, we thought about things and we got feedback from people. And then we thought maybe fiction writing. Sometimes I was thinking, how do we learn history, right? From my own personal experience, a lot of historical kind of awareness I got watching films and dramas, right? So we just came up with this, someone might have come up with something else. But it really worked well, we're glad that we chose fiction writing because you will hear from some of the authors right here, only I think 5 are here today. You will see, you will hear from them, they will share what they gained.
What's your next project?
we are already doing another one, you know. What happened for this project, you know, we took people to Victor and Albert Museum's collection at the Cloth Workers Center near Olympia. It's like a warehouse, you know, and they've got hundreds and hundreds of objects, you know, from musical instruments to chairs and, you know, jewelry, swords, you know, pandani, you know, like people wear from. Anyway, you know, just to stimulate interest, to get people interested. But then, when we finished this project, then another project idea came. Why don't we do a project just on objects at this Victor and Albert Museum? So we didn't apply for a lot of money, we applied for small funding. So at the moment, we got about 23 people choosing a particular object based at the Cloth Workers Center, you know, and they're researching, and so they'll be writing a book.
So last question is there ways for other people to be involved in future projects that you're running?
Anybody can be involved with any project that we run. We publicize, and it's up to people, you know, to join. But also, you know, I would really encourage, because you know, Woolwich is really, and this part of the world is also very historical. You know, so much, even all these India companies, sheep used to go that way, you know, Gravesend and all the way, right? There's so many stories on the river, this side, that side. Not only East India Company, but East India Company, West India, you know, the trade coming from West Indies and so on. So, you know, there could be really interesting projects for people in this side of the river as well.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ahmedullah. Okay, next we have this evening an author who has wrote a book on the Invisible Empire, White Disclosure, Tolerance and Belonging. A senior lecturer in sociology and co-director of the Centre of Research on Migration, Refugee and Belonging at the University of East London. Please can you give a warm welcome to Dr. Georgie Weems.
Thank you very much, everybody. I wasn't expecting such a kind of like long explanation. My name is Georgie Weems, and the reason that I'm here is that I've been involved in various projects of the Brick Lane Circle really since 2007, when we got involved in the 250th anniversary of the Battle of Plassey. And the reason that I got involved was that at that time I was working at Tower Hamlets College, and as part of the course that I used to teach, I did a course which was specifically linking the history of East London with the histories of South Asia, particularly Eastern South Asia. And I used to take groups of young students and not so young students for walks around the East India Docks. And the reason that I did that was because, for a whole load of reasons that I won't go into now, I was constantly really surprised by the way that the history of the links between South Asia and East London was so consistently obscured. Has anybody here recently wandered around the East India Docks? Yeah? I mean, did you see much to kind of remind you of that history? No, and it's really slightly more visible now that there's a DLR station, but when I first started there wasn't even a DLR station there to remind people that there was anything to do with East India there. So anyway, I was very concerned because it was relatively soon after there'd been British National Party councillor elected in Tower Hamlets with the slogan "Rights for Whites," and talking about the Isle of Dogs in ways as if the Isle of Dogs, which had been the hub of the British Empire, had been white, and therefore people who were living there who were white should have more right to housing. And I was I knew about the links, and I knew that there were house names and road names and place names, and yet it really wasn't something that was being very discussed and debated. So I started these as part of the course that I was teaching about those links, doing walks around the docks, which I called the Invisible Empire Walks, because when we walked around the docks, there's not actually very much you can see to remind you of the millions of pounds worth of trade that went through that area, and the thousands of people from South Asia who worked on the ships, who the working class history of Britain being very, very much tied up with this globalizing labour force of the not just the South Asian seafarers, but predominantly in that case in the Second World War, up to 25% of seafarers on British merchant ships were South Asian, and they were landing in East London. So it was those histories which directly linked South Asia and East London that you couldn't really see when you walked around the docks, and that's why I called it the Invisible Empire Talk, because it was all about, as we walked around the docks, we were looking at what was moving rather than what was necessarily there as well. So that links up very much with the kind of work that Brick Lane Circle was doing at that time, and so I got involved in doing walks around the docks, which I was no longer just doing for students. And what was really, really interesting, and continues to be interesting, because for some reason people continue to want to come on the walks, and I do them during when we have Bengal History Week and various other events, is the interest of people from all different parts of the world who have got some sort of link with the East India Company and with these histories through various, complex networks that have been existing for hundreds of years. And it's the walk has. I've even talked about it with a group called the Walking Arts Network, because it's become part of. There's a whole kind of like walking movement now, which is about walking and talking and sharing histories and sharing stories. And one of the things that comes out of these walks is that there's the framework of the walk, and then everybody who comes ends up contributing something from their particular knowledge. So, for example, somebody from the RMT, who was quite a high official in that Rail and Maritime Trades Union, came and talked in detail about the relationship between the union and seafarers. Somebody else who's actually an author for one of these books, who is an expert in maritime law. She came on the walk and she was able to talk about how maritime law kind of skewed everything towards the profit of the British and the East India Company. So that's very interesting as well. So, and the other thing, I just wanted to link it to the question that the woman asked about why this is a project of stories rather than a documentary project. And that's because of the invisibility and the lack of archive material about the lives of so many people who, not the Robert Clives, but the hundreds and thousands of other people whose lives were tied up with the East India Company. So I don't know if anybody here has read Sea of Poppies.
Yes.
Yeah. So Sea of Poppies, Amitav Ghosh, he was asked exactly that question because he is an academic anthropologist and he's done historical research, and he said, why do you tell the story of the ships as a story, not as a documentary? And he said, because we don't know about their lives. The only way that we can really imagine their lives is by imagining them. And so I think this is why these are really important, because they give some sort of humanity to many of the people whose lives and histories have really been obscured just in the kind of layers of time. So this is all about the East India Company. I've been talking about in relation to some of the things we've been doing in Tower Hamlets, but I think it's really exciting to come here to Woolwich, and when we've been sort of reaching out to all sorts of other more distant parts of the world to work together in Woolwich to, discover some of the other hidden links between some of the things that we've been doing and the histories associated with this area as well. So anyway, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, next we will have a few authors who will be reading some of their short stories from the book. So on to the stage I would like to welcome Mr. Musalman Kalam, please. Thank you very much.
Can everyone hear me okay without the microphone? Yeah? Okay. Well, first of all, to introduce myself, it was more than about 2 years ago I was introduced and I got involved with the project. And it was interesting to go through that process, and I learnt a great deal. Many thanks to, I'm a bit dyslexic, so sometimes I'm forgetful with people's names, I apologise. But I'm one of the authors on this activity, and I myself went on to about 19 different archives, libraries, archives, museums, exhibitions and conferences in and around London. And I went up to Market Drayton with near Liverpool, not too far from Birmingham, and we did a similar sort of presentation as well. And I wrote through the facts-based information, I threaded fiction writing and made a sort of playful story about a sailor who was called Lascar Raju. And this was a ship which was called the Broxtonbury ship. I researched at the British Library, and I found that he died on a ship, and he died in battle in the Portuguese area, where I presume it might have been a Portuguese ship that attacked the merchant ship. And I'm quite playful because, like the publisher, Muhammad Abdullah and other mentors kept on having to rein me back, and so I completed maybe about 30 chapters, and then one of them got refined, and then I almost went off into like science fiction fantasy as well. I said, no, none of that, God, bring it back to reality. Fact-based is a fiction writing based on facts. So I was quite creative. So I'm going to give you some samples of, now my character, in a playful way, he's a tabla player, and he performed with a fiddle player who's Irish as well. And so he picks up accents. And so I feel like sometimes I might switch to modern day contemporary popular culture, because as the author, I have that sort of playful notion of saying, look, here's a synergy with contemporary popular culture, and then I go back into the storytelling and talking specifically about the period. So I jump around a bit as well. And so I'd like to introduce something I tried before earlier, and it's playful languages of accents, and maybe multiple different languages from the Dutch area all the way down to like Africa, then India, China, the Straits, and then all the way down to Australia, New South Wales. So you might pick up lots of accents. So this is a character that might have travelled, but he's a playful songwriter. And so I'm going to give you some songs. But I'm on page 131 called Hustle and the Lascar Shuffle, to find the Hand of Time. So on page 131, you can check it out. And I have to dash off quite quickly. I apologise for that, but if you want to find more about me, I've researched at the Imperial War Museum as well, and I don't know if Muhammad Abdullah knows, there's Indian military paintings at the Churchill Museum, which is archived in the Department of Books, and then it got shut down, the department, but then what happened to the Indian military paintings, which were illustrated in the Indian military painting style, but of Churchill in World War II, so the inspiration was the Indian military paintings. And I don't know where they went, but I found that item, and they can exhibit it as well in the Churchill Museum, the digital exhibition, where you saw the Ply of India stand, the plinth, and there's the cabinet ballrooms, and then I did 2 lectures, I encouraged the research of 2 lectures at the Imperial Museum, and my master's thesis was encouraging digital Bangladesh back in '96 as well. I did 1-hour lectures on the staff intranet at the Imperial Museum, and it became part of the public calendar. I did 1-hour lectures before YouTube came up with 3-minute videos. So it shows you that innovation as well. But a bit of a song, so a bit of entertainment for you. So I'll do it in Bengali first, let me just try and remember the words. And there's some Bengali people here. Now, I have to let you know, my wife doesn't like me to sing this too much, just to let you know. Okay, so it goes like this. I'm a bit nervous now on my lips to sing. It goes, Amar Dushki, Tumar Dushki, Tara Dushki, Amra Dushki, Gasara Zontro, Gasara Zontro, Sarega, Sarega, Ai U Babi Bu, Shore orosho idir kodi, baulaga, hazar salam, hene amra, gunagar, gunagar. English translation, I'm not to blame, you're not to blame, we're not to blame, they're not to blame. Cultural translation, underneath the blanket skies, ripples of thunder, hear my cry, hear my cry. If you should falter, I will catch you. If you should falter, I'll try to catch you. Tainted love is what I know, tainted love is what I show. So then that's a one little snippet there. Then I'll give you an interpretation of a gentleman, a fictional character. It's not in my story, but it's playful writing charge because I did a theatre production with Towers as well, and it's called Planet of the Grapes and Attack of the Green Chilies. So it's playful notions of, inspiration from World War I, World War II, popular culture, and then East Indian history as well. So this character is called Debbie Dragonwater. Okay, so it goes, now here we are, mingling amongst the undergrowth, here in the library with Tony and Shah presenting to you Brick Lane Circle publication. And what we have here is the Untold Stories of the East India Company and Musalman Kalam presenting yet another song about hustle and the Lascar shuffle defying the hands of time. And then another sample as well, and more contemporary as well. This is Idris Elba meets Nelson Mandela. So you could try. So a bit of a so light and so we are in the contemporary times, and then as there is opportunity for research further in this area, so I'm interested to collaborate on that as well. If you're interested, just remember Diamonds and Dowry, and you can follow the links, and it'll go to my website and have a look. So Diamonds and Dowry goes. This one, actually, I did a song. Goes. If I gave you diamonds and dowry, would you be a happy serialist? It's about the blood in your diamonds and the sugar in your blood. Not quite the diamond in the rough, but the jewel in the crown. Not quite the demerara, but the tail too. Bengali? Ami judi hidra adauri ditam. Oi bani shuki sirialoni. Oi lohota hidra loge mishai. Manusha rochto. Oi lohota rochto loge mishai. Senior sabata. If I gave you diamonds and dowry, would you be a happy serialist? Thank you. Bengali leprechaun, and then I'll leave it there. Is that okay? Yeah. This is a Bengali leprechaun. Now, if you see the picture there, I found along at the top there it says Hustle and Lusco Shuffle, but I'm wearing green, and where they did the Great Wind-Sail Ships presentation, there's a short person who's dressed in green, and I thought it was my relative, but it's not really. But I called him the Bengali leprechaun, and he goes like this. Now, I've done this in Irish pubs as well, and I've done this in the Irish community, and they're like, I'm a bit blown away, but thinking, wow, where have you been, sort of thing. Because he goes, good evening to you all. I be a Bengali leprechaun. A Bengali leprechaun is what I be. You see, it's the beard, the fictional beard that gives it away. The green attire, matching trainers. I be a Bengali leprechaun. And on a serious note, I'd like to pose the question, why would one go to such extremes? Thank you.
That was brilliant, thank you very much. I won't be doing any voiceovers at all. Yes, that's what it's just behind me. Okay, next I'd like to welcome onto the stage another author, Mr. Ahmed Chowdhury. Mr. Ahmed Chowdhury. Okay, we'll move on swiftly if Mr. Ahmed Chowdhury is not available at this moment. I'd like to welcome the next author.
He's here.
Do we have this? Please come forward, sir. We've been waiting.
got a very soft voice, unlike my other colleague over there, so you probably struggle to hear me. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. My name's Ahmed, and I'm one of the authors. I actually wrote 2 stories in there. The first 2 are mine. Here's a little bit of synopsis of my story. So, just a brief introduction as to what the story is about. First one's about, it's actually a science fiction merged with history. So it's, I find history on its own rather not sort of my cup of tea. So I like, as a creative person, I like to sort of write a story in a creative way. I mean, obviously everyone does, but bringing other elements to make it more sort of, from my perspective, more interesting. So I've infused science with history, and I told a story about a young man who relives the life of his ancestor, which is quite topical nowadays. It's about DNA, it's about ancestral history, it's about finding out about your lineage, your family tree. So I kind of borrowed ideas from that concept, and I looked into how I can tell a story from that. I've been part of Bricklaying Circle for a while now, and I've been involved with quite a few projects. But this one has been one of the most interesting ones I've been involved with, as it allowed me to sort of fully express myself in a creative way. So the first one is called Memoroid. The first story is called Memoroid, and it's a science fiction story where the young protagonist called Ali relives the life of his ancestor. So I'm not going to tell you much more. I would like you to sort of find out yourself by reading it. And the second story I wrote was about 2 brothers, and it's more historical. There's no science fiction, pure history. And it's about 2 brothers who run away from a plantation, who are abducted there by sort of the antagonist, whose name is the antagonist. Yeah, they abduct the brothers into the tea plantation, by force, obviously, and so they run away back to their village, and kind of, so the story revolves around that. So the second story is about tea plantation, and the first one is about science fiction. So I don't want to sort of tell you everything and spoil it for you. So that's why I'm kind of keeping it very brief. That's about it really. Thank you. If you have any questions, I can maybe try and answer. Obviously, you haven't read it, so. Okay,
thank you very much. Okay, the next author we will have on would be Sagar Sumaria. No, okay. We'll move on. Can you please welcome onto the stage Sangeeta Sengupta, please.
I think you'll be fine. Yeah, I can hear you. Right. Well, where to start? I'm not a public speaker, neither am I a writer in that sense. This is my first writing. So forgive me if I do any mistakes over here. I like to be behind the scene. Usually I do take pictures of these events. So today I was put forward over here to face you guys. My involvement with this project was by chance. I was thinking of what to do. I was working with NHS for long. I wanted to complete my master's degree, but didn't have the time, so I thought, okay, let me take some time off and do my master's degree, complete my master. I'm halfway through. And then suddenly this flyer came through. I said, wow, it's a great opportunity, because I was a history student and I was in journalism before. Long time ago though. So, and I always wanted to write, like quite a lot of people secretly, they have got that desire of writing. So I had as well. And when I saw this, I said, I have to try. So it started around July, the informations, and the August time they started the program, and my master was supposed to start in September. So when I first went to the first day, I was so impressed with the opening day that I decided to quit my master degree and go for this one. So, and I'm really glad that I have taken this opportunity. This comes once in a lifetime, probably. And I really appreciate Ahmedullah's effort. He's a great guy, and he done the whole project in such a way. We learned a lot. I would say I've learned a lot regarding the research. Probably I wouldn't have learned while doing my master degree. So part of that was research. So that's part where I got involved in the project. So history was my background anyway. Writing was a little bit of my background with the journalism. Then both bunched together. I thought, let me try. My writing got influenced by when we were doing Asked to Do research. Everyone had a great idea. Having the idea is very easy. You can dream, you can have that idea, but when we were asked to put that ideas in the paper, it was so difficult for everyone. So I think we had only 2 or 3 writers in the group. Rest of us all first-time writers. So it was very difficult for us to put that great ideas in the paper. So we did a lot of work, a lot of research. We got excited. We wanted to do more research. So we bumped up in the research, but bringing it all together was really difficult. But we had some great mentor, Rajiv, and then Ahmedullah itself involved in the program. We had some writers coming in the program. So the way it's been done, we all, non-writer, become a writer, and the end product is like this. So my story is influenced when I was doing research. I wanted to write about a women character, definitely, for sure. And I'm very much influenced by Indian movies, so definitely there will be some romance and love, unconditional love, that should be in my writing. So that I'm quite aware of it. But then finding all together, there is a lot of historical love story you can see, and those are very common, which is Jhansi Ki Rani, and then a lot of movies are coming now. Somehow historical love stories become very popular in India. So I was looking into some unknown people and want to do some research and then write a story. So I even went back to Calcutta to find out more about it, but couldn't find much. But while I was doing research over here, I found one character, which is a lady, zamindar, means a lord. Over here we call, who has got a lot of lands, and they pay tax to the king. So a lady, landlord, not landlord as a landlord of the properties, but landlord of the lands. And she was the highest taxpayer during the Shirajudullah time. And prior to that, till East India Company taking over. So she had a long a history of being landlord and highest taxpayer. And that really buzzed me that, oh, I never heard of any female landlord. So that, and then came into the Shirajudullah, abducted her daughter, who was really beautiful. So because of her beauty, Shirajudullah, who was around 27 years old, abducted her daughter. So then I said, that's really good story, but I didn't like that. Just because she's beautiful, she wasn't abducted. So I have to make that character more powerful. So that's where my fictions comes through. So it is based on most of the things are on fact. The lady, which is my character, Hiranya, it's very difficult names, but those names, I did a lot of research to find out. Hiranya means eyes of a deer. see, they've got lovely eyes. So, and her daughter names, which is Elakshi, is again means eyes. So both is all eye related. I don't know whether I have got fascination of the eyes or not, but that's both beautiful name I got it. So I put it. The actual name of the person was Rani Bhavani, which was a little bit boring. So I have to make it interesting, so I made it from Rani Bhavani. So she was a widow, and she was age of 32, she took over the land law. So my story starts from there about these two powerful women. So I will read a little bit of my story. It is difficult to read from that because my story goes quite a lot of flashback. There is some twist, and that twist in the story reflects my present life, and that twist is only in one line. Quite a lot of people lost it, and that represents the name of the title of my story, which only you can get it through that one line, the twist. So I hope you can hear me. So I will read a little bit, not too much, so that you don't get bored, because it's out of context when you hear something, sometimes you can feel bored. Rani Hiranya felt disquieted at the rumor she had heard. Sorry, page number 199. If you have got the new book, I think it will be the same, because we published the new book. She paced across the room with even stride, whilst waiting for her faithful divan to arrive. Her composed posture gave no sign of turbulence going on inside her. The palace was very quiet. All the guests had departed in the early morning. Yesterday she had swamped by the responsibilities, making the event flawless and memorable. For the first time, any Nawab of Bengal had visited Rai Zamindari. Every effort had been taken to avoid the foible being noticed by her visitors. An acclaimed chef from Awadh cooked 12 different, specially selected recipes from the various parts of the Mughal Raj. After the death of her husband, she herself had led a simple and austere life, but her benevolence had no boundaries. The south block of the grand palace, where all the visitors were staying, had been given a special attention. The huge lion gate that represented pride and the strength had also been renovated. Since her childhood, Elakshi had fondness of nature. Her youth, she had wandered around the forest and practiced her archery skills. Later, when she was adopted by the Rai Zamindar, she had confined herself to the palace garden. Both the front and the back garden had semblance of tranquillities, especially the back garden with the enormous pond and trees surrounding it, making it a perfect place for birds to congregate. The broad facade of the palace displays the impressive array of the lofty fluted Corinthian columns that lined a vast continuous corridor. This created a grand entrance that had been decorated with a flower to welcome the guest. It had been a long time since any celebration has taken place in the palace. The tragedy of her husband's tantric activities, which we call cult, which had led to Lakshmi marriage and then sudden death of her husband, didn't hinder her faith in God. On the contrary, she devoted more time building exquisite terracotta temples in the vicinity of the Zamindari, 2 of which had been built in the back of the garden. The Shah could have taken palace at the Nawab Kamran's palace, which would have been made sense. Hiranya couldn't neglect the Nawab Kamran's proposal to visit her palace. She gladly accepted the request without any question in her mind. She wondered how she could have been so naive as to not be able to grasp the young Nawab's intention. Standing on her own in the room waiting for the divan, she felt anxious and questioned her ability to protect Elakshi. Flooded with the waves of memories, Hiranya remembered her promise to the Vijayanath, the commander-in-chief, at her husband's deathbed, that she would take full responsibilities for Elakshi, as if she were her own daughter. When Vijayanath himself was on his deathbed, she reassured him she would never make Elakshi feel that she didn't have parents. Adopting Elakshi had significantly changed her life. Notwithstanding being a widow at such a young age, in the man's world of Jamindari, she had never felt that the loneliness was unbearable. Her focus on Elakshi and her Zamindari made her stronger and more content person, and she often has been referred to as a lady with a great political sagacity, as well as the affectionate mother. Under her strict training regime, Elakshi had developed skills in sword fighting, horse riding at a young age. Long ago, Hiranya had noticed the hidden talent in Elakshi and secretly desired to shape those talents and make her a lady with excuse, beauty, brain, and bravery, the commander-in-chief of her army. So that's it from my side. If you have got any question, you can take.
The palace, was it a real palace, or you have visited it?
No, those palaces now in Bangladesh, and Indians couldn't travel to Bangladesh too, so most of the palace is in Bangladesh, and a lot of terracotta temples are in Bangladesh at the moment, but most of the things are ruined, but still quite a lot of things are. Palace is now turned into one of the government institute, so it came from my research.
Right.
Thanks very much. Oh, sorry, yeah.
What's the name of the institute?
The government, I can't remember, but that is turned into the government institute.
And where is it situated?
Borishal
Oh, that's in Bangladesh.
is Bangladesh. So I haven't visited, but there's not much remaining because most of the Bengal where she was, it falls under the Bangladesh at present. But there's only a little bit part, it falls under West Bengal, which is near Calcutta. So, but everything is there. But most of the things is ruined, apart from, she built 360 terracotta temples. And it's beautiful, 360.
Yeah.
Yeah, and some of them there, and she was a highest taxpayer throughout her life, and then British East India Company take over, they raised the tax thing, and then she couldn't afford it because she gave her Zamindari to his son, who wasn't as efficient as her. So they lost it because the tax was raised so much that these people couldn't afford to pay tax to British. So slowly they started losing their land to British, and then it's disappeared. It's one thing, because my story when I was doing, I did a lot of research on Sirajudullah. Sirajudullah is a hero in our country because he was the first person who protested against East India Company. And the Battle of Plassey has changed the whole history of India. So when we went to the Pious Castle and we saw Sirajuddaullah's palki is there with no history behind it, it seems to, it's been gifted. Not only that, a lot of items were there, there's no history behind it, there's no story behind it, and you feel really hurt that the British people is not learning the facts, and it's necessary, they have to learn both sides of the story. Whereas when I went to India, there was not much about the story of East India anyway. So maybe they wanted to forget about it. But again, in the V&A Museum, we saw a lot of archive items, and it's amazing. Probably even Indian government don't have those items or that many items. It's all here, so but there is no story behind it, how these items are here. And it's a simple line, either this been collected as a gift and things. So we did speak to the various castles to tell that they are also thinking to tell the different stories, different side of the stories. I think it's now time to be learn that different part both sides of, because I'm coming from India, I know the Indian prospectus of British history, but when I'm seeing history from this side, it's totally different. So it's quite amazing experience from my side. As I forgot your name, I was more concentrating as you were saying that some of the place has got a history and it's underlying a lot of things which we are not aware of. I think it will be good if we know the both side of the story.
You know, a few years ago, this Rajadullah is the hero of India, is forgotten.
Yeah.
His vote was auctioned, I think 3 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago.
Mhm.
I don't know, you mentioned it or not, it was more than $250,000. Such heroes
Yes.
should be part of the history of our
Yeah.
which is, and I feel like this library, they are the lights
Mm.
and candles of knowledge.
I do find there more research and more positive and negative story has been told this side of the land rather than being in India. So that's I really appreciate that how East India Company being criticized as well, which we wasn't aware of when we studied about the East India Company. We were told it's always been a proud thing by the British. But when I was studying over here, it's been really it's a different story. So it's interesting to know both end kind of things, so what we see from other end. We would like to see, especially to know the both side of the story for the next generation. So that will be nice to see it. Hopefully we have able to bring some of the story. A lot of people who are born and brought up over here, they had the story from this side of the East India Company. So that's also something very nice to see. But some of them are, in general, say. But I hope you will enjoy reading all the story. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Sangeeta. Okay, our last author for this evening would be Majida Rahman Chowdhury. Please welcome her on. Thank you.
Hi, I've not really prepared a lot, so I'll just tell you a little bit about how I started. So I graduated and then I realised that I graduated with a history degree, and after I graduated I kind of went into the charity sector, and I'm still in the charity sector and I love it, but I wanted to continue my passion for history. And during my undergraduate degree, my focus was on World War, so World War I mainly. So after I graduated, I'm like, I want to do more, I want to learn more, and I came across this project about the East India Company. And when I did that, I thought, okay, that's a good way for me to find out about the different areas in history, rather than just to restrict myself to that one area that I love studying, which is World War I. But we did a lot of walks, we did a lot of learning. But when it came to actually writing, my mind drew to war. Because when you think of the East India Company, for me, the first thing that comes to my mind is the Battle of Plassey. So my story is about that. It's about the Battle of Plassey. And it's more specifically about Mir Jafar. So Mir Jafar is like the villain. I have a fascination with villains. I know it's strange, but I have a really weird fascination with villains, and I wanted to know the backstory. So my story is about Mir Jafar's backstory, and I didn't want to write from the perspective of Mir Jafar, because obviously there's a lot of history written about him, and I feel like I would be too restricted in whatever I write about. So I decided to write about his wife's perspective, from his wife's perspective. He had 3 wives. So my story is about his first wife, who was also the half-sister of Nawab at the time. So the story was already bubbling in my head. And I spoke to my dad about it. I'm Bangladeshi. And my dad's like, nope, if you're going to do Mir Jafar, you cannot present him as a good guy if you're writing about his history. So I'm like, sure, okay. How do I paint this guy as a villain? We need to start. So My story explores the relationship between him and his wife, his first wife. And the inspiration for my story, so I went to the British Tate Museum, and there was a really interesting, I don't know if you can see it, there was a really interesting image of everybody, so it included like Indian commoners, it included like the Dutch, the Portuguese and the British people in a market setting. So that was kind of the inspiration for where my story started. That was the meeting point of my two characters. And so yeah, my story just explores the relationship and kind of gives you a background of Mir Jafar. I didn't want to, because I am a historian, I didn't want to stray too much from the facts, so I tried to keep my story as historically accurate as possible, which was easier, like I said, because I grew up from his wife's perspective. Thank you.
Any questions? Any questions?
When you all researched, did you research as a group together, or did you go off in your own directions and just do completely independent research? Were you sharing ideas?
So in the beginning, we did have a lot of, like we had walks, we had a lot of learning sessions, and what the purpose of that was to inspire us to write stories and so we even had like a walk through by Nick Robbins. I don't know if you're familiar with Nick Robbins, but we had a walk with Nick Robbins who kind of led us through a walking history of the East India Company. So we had so many opportunities to be inspired, but then at the end it came to us and what we really wanted to focus on, because this project was so, like, you could write about anything related to the East India Company. My mind went to Battle of Plassey and Jafar.
So do you all knew what each other were all writing about?
What's interesting is, when we first started out, everybody worked together, but when everybody went off and started their projects, started their writing, like, I didn't know what everybody else was doing, but then we did have, so I know Sangeeta talked about Rajiv, we had a fictional writer help us, so whenever we had these meetups, we're like, oh, okay, so you're writing about this, and it was really interesting because our stories are set in different eras. Obviously, the British East India Company was in India for a long time, so the fact that even like the eras, the location, the people, it's very diverse as well.
When is the time?
Sorry?
When the time?
The time period where British East India Company was there?
No, when we are talking about this life.
Okay, I'm talking about early 17th?
17th century.
No, early 1700s, so 17th century. Yeah. So that's my story. My story, if you're going to read my story is reading between the lines. It really jumps back and forth, so the history is very important, especially in exploring the relationship between Mir Jafar and his wife. Any other questions?
Thank you. This and all the other stories have been really interesting to listen to. Has the group or individually sold your ideas yet to Channel 4 or to BBC 2? Because I could really see some short dramas out of this. Maybe not so lofty. There's an art centre over the Isle of Dogs that does an annual season of Bangladeshi drama right around now, the Space Art Centre. There's a little mini festival of Bangla drama happening and dance at the minute, and I could really see a lot of this work next year.
I'm an amateur writer, so that's a huge compliment. Thank you.
For everyone, very, very interesting. Yeah? Or at least be a fact checker for Channel 4 or the BBC. Make sure they get their facts right, make some money that way.
You got any connections?
Right? No, well, it's a little theatre idea at the BBC now.
Thank you.
Okay, to wrap up the evening, we will have a short performance telling the Untold. So it'll be a dramatisation of some of the sections from the several stories of the book. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to help yourself to a few more refreshments while I set the stage, and we will commence in another 2 to 3 minutes.
Can I take the book?
Thank you.
I think half the people are going to go now.
So how you been? Yeah, long time.
Nice to see you.
Oh, nice to see you. Yeah, it's been ages, man.
You look exactly the same. Only a little bit bigger.
Only a little bit bigger.
This gentleman?
particular stories of which that we will like to bring to life. The first one will be, where is it? Hang on, Jack and Vic, which one is it? I don't think it's Jack and Vic though. Yes, it's this one, Saga Vijaya. And it's about a young man called Jack and his lovely wife Victoria, who travelled to India to get away from Davy Jones, who is a loan shark. I'll say no more. The second one is a Medina story. The second one, what's the second one?
Mazida.
Yeah, it's Medina story. Okay, which is called. Wait.
Read between the lines.
That's right. This one here. Read between the lines. It's a bit of a long one. I suggest you read this afterwards. It's actually a true story, apparently. Dramatised. Then we will be showing you Sita's Circle.
Yes.
Yes, Sita's Circle, about the widow of a husband who is saved by a gentleman from the East India Company, and her thoughts on the issue. And we will close our performance with...
Alakshi.
That's right. It's not called Alakshi though, is it?
Yes.
Where is it then?
Oh, it's Sound of Silence.
It's Sound of Silence, yeah, exactly.
Behind you.
There it is. Yes, I did it. Sorry. They all know by Alakshi, because that's the title that I put when I first read them all. I read them all before they had titles, so I had to make up my own. Sound of Silence is it based on a true story? Because
It's some fact, yeah.
Because we saw a performance part of the Caesar Bangla Drama Festival on, what's it called? Chitrangada, who was a warrior princess. And so, yeah, this is about a warrior princess.
Yeah.
But it's a bit of a tragic tale. Again, I'll leave it to the actors to portray it. So, if you can give my actors a round of applause. Thank you. Okay.
My name is Jack. I'm a rope tyer. I make rope out of the strongest plant called hemp. I needed the money. I have a beautiful wife named Victoria, and we needed the money. And that's why I got mixed up with Davy Jones.
What did you do to my Jack? Your Jack has until tomorrow to return my money.
I'll get your money! I promise you.
Why didn't you tell me he was threatening you?
I borrowed a bit of money from him, but then he wanted more interest. And he said he would go after you if I said anything else.
How much money have you got left?
I had to pay the tickets to India, and we don't have much left. My boys from the Navy say that the cost of living in India is much cheaper, so we'll be fine. We can provide for ourselves, and we'll be okay. Blimey, that's a girl with a kick like that. I reckon she takes after her mum.
Land ahoy!
Oh. 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 See here. Doctor!
No.
Doctor! She's having a baby, Doc.
I can see that.
She's in a lot of pain, Doc. Can't you do something?
I can see that too. Come on, Victoria. Remember your breathing exercises. Inhale. Now exhale. And inhale.
happens if we can't reduce the pain?
She may not be able to make it. Her and the baby.
Doc! There's a book I read.
Your wife is struggling to have a baby.
No, there's this book I read. It says that there's an herb that reduces pain. I can't remember the name of it.
Where did you find out? Where did you find out about this?
I bought the book at the Jamar Bazaar. The author says that it reduces pain. What is it?
Okay.
Yeah.
Go to the town of Rajbari. Look for a man called Zafar. Tell him I sent you there. He'll be able to help you.
Great.
Quickly!
Dr. Doraiswamy sent me. He says you have an herb that cures pain.
Ah, 1 minute. One drop on the top. Every 2 hours, no more.
Much obliged. Thank you. I got it. Here it is.
What we call her?
How about him?
How about I knock you out?
He's as strong as her mother. I say we call her Victoria. What are you doing? Grub Alberti is the guest of honor. You can't just serve him the same as the rest of the guests. I'm sorry, my brother. I squeezed his milk for you, just myself. And I added a bit of pistachio, just the way you like it. And we both know the rules of boss, and I hate to say, Brother Alberti, but I was unable to fend off against me, Habib, and the Afghans for the Interport and Risi.
It's okay, my brother. I wouldn't be able to defend him myself.
Stop! This is my husband Ali. Nawab Ali Vardi is my brother. You see, my husband is not all that he seems. Recently, I found a letter in his room, written by his hand. Dear Ramada, I'm writing this letter for you because I want you to plan a feast as a way of apologizing and acknowledging my mistake. The guest of honor shall be our dear brother, Nawab Ali Vardi. I understand why Ali Vardi dismissed me. He has many worries. As his... Forget it. Arrange dinner plans at a time around 8 p.m. because that is his everyday routine every night. He likes drinking milk. Make sure that is there. I remember the disaster that happened last time the servants forgot. Thing is, I know he's fussy when he eats. I want a mix of people at the dinner. No one with poison mind. Good people at the dinner. Coriander with the food, because that is his favorite. You are in charge. Will you handle everything? Get this done, please. The pressure is on. Remainder to yourself that of all parties thrown, yours should be the best. Payment is no problem at all. Your brother, the ever victorious, is Nawab, ruler of Bengal. Is that clear? The dead should regret missing this party. M.J. Ali. This letter makes no sense. My husband's penmanship is perfect. Yet, this letter is full of mistakes. Perhaps this letter is in quote. The first misspelled word was for. I began underlining every fourth word, and rereading it revealed my husband's real plan. That milk is poisoned. What am I going to do? It's too late now. I can't stop my husband. And how would I stop him? But I have a plan. I think you should let Ali have this milk. You see, brother, if you have truly forgiven him, then you would give him your freshly squeezed pistachio milk.
I think you're right. However, I think you're the one who should be feeding him yourself.
Drink, my dear husband. This pistachio milk must be delicious. You freshly squeezed it, and I know what you're capable of.
Thank you, Amalia. The milk was quite delicious. Especially, I loved how you fed it to me with your own hands. You made it even more delightful. Why are you sleeping here tonight? I miss you in our room. I especially thought it was romantic how you fed the milk with your two own hands in front of everyone. Why are you so scared of me? It's me, Ali, your husband. Can I ask you a question? Why is it you wanted me to drink the milk? After I finished it, you seemed so shocked. No. Did you want to have some milk as well? I'm sorry, my dear Maria. It's just that the milk was just to die for. You don't think there's something wrong with the milk now, do you? No. Otherwise, we would never have suggested me drinking the milk in the first place. I think you know what I'm fully capable of doing, and I'm willing to live with that. You should always know I'll be always one step ahead of you, no matter what you do or what you say. After all, you are a woman. Miran acts as my eyes and my ears when I'm not around. He saw you talk to the bride servant about the letter. He just snatched the letter and gave it to me, and I burned the evidence with it. You women are no match for us men. But you made me realize something. Brother Alberti has done so much for me. I need him for his contacts and his supports. I can't let anything happen to him. At least, for now. What you did today was very bold, but you must know who you're dealing with, and that is Mir Jafar Ali Khan.
The opium-clad stupor disengages my mind from my body. As I gaze down at the wretched, semi-somnolent, crimson-clad form, bound in one last unwilling embrace to her dead husband, the harsh ropes chafe against my wrists and my ankles, beading them in thin bracelets of blood. I realise I am that woman. I am that Sati, that virtuous wife who burns with her dead husband to cleanse him of all sin. But he saved me. He pulled me from the funeral pyre, but only because his company rules permitted it. He believes my religion is steeped in superstition and priestly tyranny. Yet he and his countrymen allow our women to burn, as long as it is done in accordance with the Hindu scriptures, which they supposedly scorn. Did he really think that Sita had any choice but to cast herself into the flames when Rama doubted her fidelity? I wanted to show this benign, benevolent, ignorant man that I can step outside of Sita's circle. So 20 years later, he had amassed enough to purchase a small estate back home. He hesitantly asked me to accompany him, unsure of my response. He sailed away from Calcutta's shores, assured that he was leaving these lands under a more benevolent government than they had ever before enjoyed, albeit though he was never certain. He was asking me to leave. These jewelled colours, tropical warmth, familiar smells and subtle tastes, this land of 7 seas and 13 rivers, to join him on his bleak island home. I keep myself and my soul from his grasping God, but he saved my life after all. I can never give him the affection he yearns, but my body can travel with him over black waters. I owe him that much at least.
Why have you captured your Lakshi?
Aye, she's a great fighter, that one. Took our men 1.5 hours to capture her and a well-trained troop. It was a pleasure to fight her. She may look innocent and fragile, but she has immense strength and a fighting spirit to resist all men. They took our men, and she injured most of my men in our battle. Previously, I admired her for her beauty, but I'm only mesmerized by her other talent.
This is political madness.
Why are you so bothered by this?
I remember the events of that evening. I was in the forest, returning home after hunting with my troops. Lost in my own thoughts, I was trailing behind and did not notice. Suddenly, there was a sound in the bushes. And there it was, a magnificent white peacock. But it just flew away. Suddenly, there was a snowflake flying in my direction. But it was not a snowflake. It was a pearlescent white feather. I heard the sound of twigs being stepped on behind me, and 2 hands bound me. I felt the presence of a third. Just as they were about to strike me, I saw her staring at me with her eyes like black diamonds, her hair flying in the summer breeze. Who was she, I wondered? Was she my pearlescent peacock, now in the form of a human? Or was she some ancient Hindu goddess here to save me? 2 swords clanged as she took down the first and felled the second from behind. I stood there searching for my sword when I noticed she was walking in my direction. She silently handed me my sword and stared at my right hand. I extended the peacock feather in a silent thank you. I'll make you a deal. I'll help you fight the Firangi if you let Ilakshi go.
Really? Do you swear by it?
Upon my honor.
Very well. You may release her. I need you more than I need her.
Ilakshi! Ilakshi! You're free to go now. You can go home, back to your palace. I can't come with you. I have to help Nawab Kamran fight the Firangi. You may not approve of my decision, just like your mother. But you must understand, being the only heir of the king is a big responsibility. I don't have many choices. I must take the princely role. I'm not like the others, fighting for war and glory. But I have very limited choices. But before you go, I have something to give you. I've captured all my thoughts in this letter. Ever since that day in the forest, you have been in my thoughts. And I have only one question for you. Have I ever come in your thoughts? And if so, will you wait for me? My estate and everything that I own now belongs to the East India Company.
And what of Nawab Kamran?
He was killed on the second day of the battle. He will never know that he was betrayed by the very people he trusted. His closest ally, Mohammed Amir, betrayed him for only 30,000 rupees. I thank you for your hospitality. May I ask a question? How is Ilakshi doing after being released from Kamran's palace?
But Ilakshi has not returned since her release.
How is that that possible?
I do not know. I've searched for her everywhere. I fear for her life.
I make a vow. I'll look for her day and night and will not return to the castle until I find her.
Oh, young man, maybe you can help me. Can you carry this for me, please? Oh,
Sure.
I must get home before the sun sets. Oh,
Home? Where do you live?
just on the edge of the forest.
What are you going to be doing with all these twigs and leaves?
This is medicine.
For who?
I must get it to her quickly if we're going to keep her alive.
Who, your daughter?
She is like my daughter. She would come to us in the forest every day, and we'd call her Bono Canyon, you know, queen of the forest. She was very good at archery. My husband would teach her archery. But it's a shame she lost her hearing at such a young age. But that did not stop her from being the best swordsman ever. I don't know who would dare to hurt her like that.
Who was her father?
Devaj.
The Devaj of the Razamindari?
Yes, yes.
She is the Devaj's daughter.
She is. I don't know how she's still alive, how she's still
Meenakshi?
Thank you very much for staying in. Hope you found it enjoyable and stimulating. I'd like to really thank the library, for arranging this, giving us this opportunity here, and Surinder Chima for helping to organizing the library. And all the authors who came. Now Sagar over there, they dramatized. First story dramatized was by Sagar, but he got lost. He went somewhere else. He didn't have the machine to.
I decided to check out the other library.
Anyway, thank you very much, and hopefully, more historical projects will come out of this area.